Welcome, everybody. We continue with our Daf Yomi and Rif Maseches Brachos. A lot of good stuff today. A lot of important halacha lamasa. So we actually start with the Mishnah on the very bottom of Yud Aleph and Beis 11b in the Rif pages. Noshim va'avodim v'ktanim p'turim v'kriyashma tefillah v'chayim b'tefillah b'zuza b'rikas ha'mazon. Women, slaves, and of course minors are all exempt from Kriya Shema, from reading Shema, from Tefillin, but they are obligated in davening, right? Because as we're going to learn, um, you know, davening, does not have you could really daven any time. You have to daven at the prescribed times to get added reward, but there's no set time for davening, biblically speaking. Even those who hold that the obligation to daven is only rabbinic, but the concept of tefillah is timeless. Even though Chazal gave you specific times to daven, but of course this rings easier to understand. According to Rambam, that holds that there's no biblical time for prayer, but it's a biblical obligation. Otherwise, tefillah is not a mitzvah seishas man grama, and neither is mezuzah. The obligation to put a mezuzah on your doorpost if it's a house that you live in. All right, uba birkas mazon, also benching, grace after meals. So even then, women and slaves and even minors, because of chinuch, have to do these mitzvahs. Right? All right. Now, and that's what the Gemara explains. What brings the Gemara that explains this, the way we just said. All right. Right, so Kriyash Baba Tefillin, Dali Mitzvah Shazman Grama, Shazman Grama, Nashim Torahs. So Kriyash and Tefillin are positive commandments that are time bound. This goes according to the Shita that Tefillin is, you are really exempt from it at night, biblically. Or alternatively, it says Mitzvah Shazman Grama, because you're exempt from it on Shabbos, Yom Tif. All right, but the simple reading of the Gemara goes according that understands that tefillin is also mitzvah shazman grama, or mitzvah shazman grama, any positive commandment that is time bound, meaning the time of day or the time on the calendar is what brings the obligation. So not tourists. So women are exempt from those type of mitzvahs, right? The positive commandments that are brought, that are created. The obligation comes with time, right? The calendar brings the obligation, or the time of day brings the obligation. So by Shema, it's not the calendar, but it's the time of day when you go to sleep or when you get up, right? And we know that slaves, Evet Kanani, we talk about Evet Kanani, non-Jewish slaves are chayav in mitzvahs like a woman. Tefillah mezuzah birkas mazavim mitzvah shos magraba. Now to daven, it is davening is timeless, even if you're only going to get the biggest reward for davening on time, Brachos, Mincha, Marav, in their respective times. But the concept of tefillah is timeless. Right, and mezuzah, is also not time bound, and birkas hamazon is also not time bound. The mitzvah shalah mangra; these are mitzvah positive commands that are not caused by time. Mitzvah shalah mangrama nashim chayavos. Right, any mitzvah positive command that's not time bound. It's not the time that brings the obligation. Women are obligated. Nashim chayavos b'kir shayom dvar Torah. But now, exception to the rule is, there are a few exceptions. But one of the famous exceptions to the rule is that women are obligated in Kiddush on Friday night, Midoraisa, by Torah law. Because we know that by the Aser, by the Decalogue, Yes, so there was, it says in the, which were said, B'dibur Echad, all the differences as they are written out between the way the Asers are written out in Parshas Yisro and the way the Asers are written out in Parshas Veschanan. All those differences were said simultaneously, miraculously simultaneously, and to teach you to cross-reference them. So then, in the Aseret difference in Yisro says Zachar Siyamashas Kach, which is the obligation of Kiddush, right? Remember the Shabbos, right? That's the obligation of Kiddush, right? But the way it's written in the Aseret difference in Chanan, it's Shomar Yom HaShabbos, keep Yom HaShabbos, which women are definitely obligated to keep Shabbos. They may not desecrate Shabbos. We say whoever is obligated to keep Shabbos is obligated to remember the Shabbos. So from there we learn out that women, right? Anyone that's obligated to keep the Shabbos is also obligated to remember Shabbos. These women, since they are obligated in keeping Shabbos, they're also obligated to make Kiddush, which is to remember the Shabbos. Just mention that we have something very similar elsewhere, that women are chayav in matzah on Seder night, even though it's also a positive remember that's time bound, because the Seder night brings the obligation, because there's something very similar. There's a heckish between the prohibition of eating chametz and the positive commandment to eat matzah. And for anyone who's prohibited to eat chametz is obligated to eat matzah also. A very similar nuance to the drasha, which obligates women to eat matzah, even biblically. All right. So now the dilemma over here is on Havdalah. If Havdalah is an extension of the mitzvah of Kiddush, then you have to remember Shabbos when it comes in, when it goes out, which is the position of the Rambam, that women ought to be obligated in Havdalah also. It's part of the positive commandment of remembering the Shabbos. Remember Shabbos as it comes in, which is Kiddush. Remember it as it goes out with Havdalah. But we remain in doubt whether Havdalah is really a function of Kiddush or not, and that's why you might be aware that women may have no qualms of making their own Kiddush if they're alone for Shabbos and their husband is away, or there's just no man in the house. But women often seek out a male to make Havdalah for them if there's no other male in the house, because of that dilemma, because we are in doubt whether Havdalah is a function of Kiddush or not. If it's a function of Kiddush, of course they're obligated, and if not, they may not be, and that's why they prefer for a man to exempt them from the Havdalah. Okay. The next Mishnah, Baal Keri Mar believe Avenu Mevarach Lofnei V'Lacharea. Right, so now a Baal Keri, a person who had a emission, out came seed, so he is impure. Now this goes back to the days of yore, when there was Takonas Ezra, the Takon of Ezra Sofer, that they barred a person who was a Baal Keri, a person who had an emission, seed came out of him, and it makes no difference whether it happened, because he was asleep, he had one of those dreams, or he was with his wife, and then also, the seed comes out. And certainly so if he did it, God forbid, he did the sin of releasing seed on purpose. In all of these scenarios, all of the above scenarios, Ezra wanted to, find people and keep them on the discourage them, and even to discourage people from being with their wives too much, too often. So he made it, they instituted you should not pray or learn Torah until you either went to the mikveh, but they also gave another leeway. They gave a leeway of tes kabin, of pouring 9 kabin over you, but the 9 kabin has to be poured, as opposed to, so you either have to do the mikveh way, or the 9 kabin, it being poured over you. And then you may say Shema, daven, and learn Torah. Now we're going to learn that the people just could not keep this up. It was just too much to so it was abolished. But it remains as the kids of today would say, it remains a thing, right? It remains a value that Chassidim are very strict about this, and the Mekubalim are also very strict about this when it comes to learning Kabbalah, at least, right? And that try to uphold this ancient injunction of Ezra, and indeed not to engage. Do your best to be pure for prayer. Do your best to be pure for Torah study, particularly when studying Kabbalah. Okay, but the mission is going back in the days when this decree of Ezra was in full force. So the Balkari, a person who had released seed, so he should only think the words of Shema. So even though it's a biblical obligation, they still zapped him to think the words of Shema, but not to say it. And they totally barred him from saying the brachos of Shema that come before it and after it. But since Birkas Hamazon is biblical, so they did not uproot his obligation to bench after meals, but the bracha that he makes before eating is only rabbinic. So that the Chazal did bar him from making a bracha before eating. They barred him from making the bracha before eating, but they didn't uproot his obligation to bench after meals because that's biblical. Rebuta disagrees and says that the Baal Keri, the guy who released seed, will also make a bracha before the food also. The reason, and the Gemara explains what the reason Rav Yehuda is. Like I said, as we're going to learn, this doesn't. This doesn't. We will yet learn that this doesn't apply to us in this day and age. When being strict about only praying and learning in purity is only a custom. It is not there's not rabbinic law anymore. It was uprooted because the public couldn't handle it. Okay, so says the Gemara that the Rif brings. Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, says we read the name of Shmuel. Savik Karash Kriyat Shema. Tafik Lo Kara. It's in doubt. Did he read Shema? Did he not say Shema? He doesn't remember. Hey, did I say Shema? Did I not say Shema? Right? Eino Choser v'Korei. Right? So if in doubt, you may be lenient with yourself, and you don't have to read Shema again. Right? But if you are in doubt, hey, did I say Emes V'Yatziv? Or did I not say Emes V'Yatziv? Like his doubt was, he got spaced out. And he's, he knows he said Shema. He knows he said Shema, which means if he knows he said Shema, so he definitely knows that he made the blessings before Shema. The first two of, Yom Te'or and Avarabba. That he knows, right? Because he knows he said Shema, so he probably said the blessings before Shema. Now he's spaced out. Am I ready to go into Shemona Esrei, or did I say Emes V'Yatziv? Right? So he should. So when doubt, yes, say Emes V'Yatziv all over again. So now Rav Yehuda, name of Shmuel, when he obviously holds that the obligation to say Shema is only rabbinic, meaning he would understand that the dibarta bam, speak in them, is talking that pasuk would seemingly command us to read Shema. You speak in them. It's not talking about Shema per se. It's talking about Torah. Talking about Torah. Speak in Torah at all times when you go to sleep and when you wake up. Always be speaking in Torah. So he would hold that the obligation to say Kriyat as we know it. These three chapters is only rabbinic, right? But the obligation to say Emes V'Yatziv, as Raisa, that obligation is biblical. Why? Because as we say in the Haggadah of Pesach, right, we have to say it. We have to say Yetzias Mitzrayim. Biblical obligation, as the pasuk says, is the famous din of Rav Elazar ben Azariah. That we have to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim by day and by night, as the pasuk says, "Aman Tiskos Yom Tzis You should remember the day that you left Egypt, all the days of your life. Meaning, you have to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim all days of your life, and we say all the days to include even at night. So the obligation to say, so we were talking about by the day, which is not even any no one ever had any doubts about that. So the obligation to mention Shema, to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim is biblical, and Emes V'Yativ, we say Mitzrayim Gal Hashem, you redeemed us from Mitzrayim. Reb Lezer says, Suffolk Krokesh, Masalo Korach, Chozer V'Korei, Suffolk Ispal, Suffolk Ispal, Eino Chozer Umispalo. It says, the other way around. If you're in doubt whether you said Shema or not, you have to say Shema again. If you have in doubt whether you prayed or not, don't pray again. Right? If you don't know if you said the Shemona Esrei of Shacharis or not, leave it. And it's self-explanatory because he paskins the way, because that's the way we paskin also, that the V'dibartabam speaking Shema is biblical. That Pasuk Torah will command us to read Shema. So he holds the obligation to say Shema twice a day is biblical, right? Whereas the obligation to pray, at the designated times is only rabbinic. So therefore, since the obligation to say Shema is biblical, something go right. So when in doubt regarding saying biblical law, you have to take the more stringent side of the doubt. But as far as tefillah at its time, Shachos Mincha Marav, it's only rabbinic. All right, so it's only rabbinic. You could take the more lenient view and assume that you davened if you don't remember one way or the other. So you assume you did daven and you don't have to daven again. Right, right. So now Rabbi Yochanan says, what's the problem? A person should just daven all day long, right? Right. So Rabbi Yochanan seemingly is saying, no, what do you mean? And the question is why? It says, a person should just be praying. So, I mean, if you have a doubt, pray again. What do you care? What do you care? Right. 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 So now we'll see how the Rif interprets Rabbi Yochanan. Right. It's a big machlokas Rishonim. Rabbi Yochanan says, quite quickly, what do you mean? Of course you should daven again. The person should be praying all the time. Right. So the question is, what did Rabbi Yochanan mean? Let's let the Rif talk. And as far as if you have any, as we say over and over again in this forum, any real practical halacha questions, ask your local Orthodox rabbi. But says the Rif, the concrete the rice. First of all, we don't paskin like Shmuel that holds that the obligation to say Shema, as we know, is only rabbinic. We paskin like Rabbi Lezer that the obligation to say Shema is biblical. So that's why, if you're in doubt whether you said Shema or not, you have to take the more stringent side of the doubt and say Shema again. So in case you didn't say it. Now we do pass like this. Rabbi Yochanan said, regarding if you're not sure whether you daven or not. Rabbi Yochanan says, what's the problem? A person should be davening all day long. What does that mean? First, Rabbanan. So the Rabbanan explained, "Nani mili biyachid ba'daita the rishus, al daita the chova asur." So the rabbis explained that which Rabbi Yochanan said, right, that a person should be praying all day, right? He was not contradicting Rabbi Lezer that that you could take the more lenient view. If you don't remember if you said Shemona Esrei or not, you could be Mako. That was Rabbi Yochanan added. You should be praying all day long. That's only about voluntary prayer, obligatory prayer or not, right? That's only a single Jew, and doing so the rishus, a voluntary prayer. I would like to the chava asur, right? But to pray again, look, I'm davening shachars 10 times. I'm feeling real religious. And I'm davening 10 shachars. That's prohibited. That is to say blessings in vain, right? That which Rabbi Yochanan said, you could pray all day long. What's the problem? That's if voluntary prayer, voluntary prayer. But to say, pray Shemona Esrei to fulfill your obligation. Then, of let's say Shabbos, and to daven another Shema Esrei immediately afterwards, also again, but to do Shabbos a second time is prohibited. Right? All Rav Yochanan was saying is that you could pray all day long if it's a voluntary prayer. You take it on as a voluntary prayer, not as a obligatory prayer that you have, already fulfilled or may have already fulfilled. And even then, it's only if you are a single Jew doing it as an individual. There is no such thing as the public taking on a voluntary prayer. And that's what he goes on to say. V'tzibur ben adaita l'chol ben adaita rishus also kan tefillos k'neged tzvidim tikun she'shazur mevi'in olas nedava kachan tzibur mevi'in tfilas nedava. Right? But the public may never, take on a voluntary prayer. So therefore, the halacha for sure by the public is if they think they don't know if they don't have a whole spaced out public, or 10 people got together, each one of them was spaced out, whether he davened shachris that morning or not. The public as a public, so for sure, you can always take the lenient view because tefillah is the rabbana. Right, the prescribed prayer times only midrabanan, so they could all take the lenient view, but say, okay, but hey, let's make a minyan to make a voluntary prayer. The public may not do a voluntary prayer because the prayers that we do in public are connected to the carbon Talmud, which were korbanos tzibur, right? The prayers that we do in public are parallel to the Talmud Shel Shachar and the Talmud Shel Ben Arbaim, right? The two Korbanos Talmud, which are Korbanos, they are public offerings. Those offerings were offered in temple on behalf of all the Jewish people. So that's why all the Jewish people have a communal prayer parallel to those Korbanos, right? The voluntary prayer of a single Jew is, so Chazal found a precedent for it in the fact that I could bring an olas nedav, I could bring a voluntary offering. But only an individual could bring a voluntary offering back when we had a temple. There's no such thing as the tzibur, as the public bringing a voluntary offering. So therefore, the tzibur has no right to make a voluntary prayer because there's no such thing, because everything was copied over from precedents that we found by the sacrifices. All right, so there's no such thing as the public bringing a voluntary offering. The public only brings, the public offerings are only korbanos chova, right, obligatory sacrifices. So therefore, the communal prayer can only be for the prayers that reflect, the communal sacrifices, which were all sacrifices of obligation. There's no such thing as a communal prayer of, for a voluntary prayer, because there's no such thing as a communal voluntary offering, back in the days of the temple. Right? Right. Just like these, public cannot bring a offering which is voluntary. Also, the public cannot make a tefillah, a prayer that is a voluntary prayer. But a single individual Jew can offer a voluntary prayer because a single Jew was allowed to, the individual was allowed to bring in the temple an olas nedava, a voluntary offering. Hilkach, and therefore, right? And a yachim mishpal tefillas musafim tefillas nedava sheizal become musa, right? Right? So now, therefore, case in point, since everything has to follow a pattern, follow precedent that we had by the korbanos, by the sacrifices. Can an individual say, "I'm going to daven a voluntary musaf"? No, because the musaf is parallel to the korban musaf, the supplementary offering that there was on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and an individual cannot volunteer a korban musaf. So therefore, there is no such thing as davening musaf nedava, right? A voluntary musaf, because an individual, cannot pledge a korban musaf, a voluntary korban musaf. Musaf is only obligatory and only for the tzibur, right? Which an individual cannot imitate He can't bring it, so just like he can't bring one voluntarily, he cannot offer a musaf prayer voluntarily. Right? So it comes out, by the way. Right now, we're going to stop here, but also comes out that on Shabbos, we're gonna have all these halachas later of the voluntary tefillas. Right on Shabbos, it would come out that you cannot make a tefillas nedava. The individual cannot do a tefillas nedava because on Shabbos, back in the days of temple, on Shabbos they would not sacrifice a voluntary offering that an individual pledged. Right, that offering does not, is not docha Shabbos. Also, we have that issue that you cannot do a tefillas, and the individual may not do a tefillas and dava on Shabbos. Period. Never musaf. Let's say on Rosh Chodesh. Right, that's what the Rif meant. On Rosh Chodesh, you can't bring a tefillas musaf. Right. So on Rosh Chodesh, you can't voluntarily daven another musaf of Rosh Chodesh because you can't bring the type of carbon. On Shabbos, you can't even daven a voluntary shacharis of Shabbos because they would never sacrifice a voluntary offering on Shabbos, period. All right, we will review these tomorrow. We've already gone halfway down 13a, Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, so we will stop here. Stay tuned for other Maseches that we do in Rif. And today we will be starting Mesilas Yesharim in the original dialogue version that was only found and published about 20 years ago, from the Ramchal. So please subscribe to the channel and get notification of all this other great stuff that's coming up. Take care, everybody.